to political editor Andrew Probyn in Canberra. Andrew, these figures would have to bring a smile to Scott Morrison's face.
They would, but there's also an aspect of it that he knows is also true, and that is that the underlying unemployment figure is much higher. In fact, it was a point that he made only about 10 minutes ago when he was holding a press conference at BlueScope Steel. So these are fascinating numbers, because if you track the unemployment rate, it went from 7.4 the month before the last month we had, and they went to 7.5, and now for August 6.8, as Sue was saying. But it's a bit topsy-turvy because we have lots of different stories depending on where you are. And of course, there's been a lot of attention on Victoria of late. These figures do reflect a full month of stage 4 lockdown in Victoria. So Victoria's gone up by 0.3 to 7.1 but there have been some big falls.
You're surprised that that's not much more than it's come in at.
Look, yes, I am to some degree, but at the same time, these numbers, Joe, are somewhat misleading, as the Prime Minister and every minister seems to be saying that the real unemployment rate, that is when you take into account the sort of subsidies that are there and support for jobs of people who actually aren't working, it's nearer 13-14%. So these are numbers that have some intrigue in them, but there are some interesting stories in, say, for example, Western Australia. Now, we saw Mark McGowan only speaking last night on 7:30, talking about how his state was doing so much better. Well, you can see that unemployment rate in WA went from 8.3% to 7.0%. So these sorts of figures on a state-by-state basis might only encourage certain premiers to keep their borders closed. So really fascinating, because they do tell those stories in the granular. One would expect in the next few weeks, and perhaps partly reflected in the next month's numbers, which we'll see in a month's time, that there should be an easing there of the Victorian numbers. But those restrictions are only starting really in the regional areas of Victoria. But the good numbers when it comes to the infection, down to 28 in Victoria, very good news down there, because it will give the government a bit more confidence that it can loosen some of those restrictions.
Yeah. And Andrew, tell us where things are at with the JobKeeper and the job seeker kind of unemployment subsidy and wage subsidy. Where are things at with them now? What's the government's plans with them, and how does this figure today work in with the government's plan in relation to those?
Well, it would only enthuse the government for its argument, and that is that JobKeeper is temporary and needs to be weaned from the economy. The opposition leader is still saying that it's too early to withdraw it in the way that it is being and will be withdrawn. We are only a couple of weeks away from the federal budget, and this budget was, I imagine, a few months ago going to be much bigger than it actually will be. I think now, because we have had this second surge in Victoria, this budget on October 6 will be part of a two-stage budgetary reset, given that we'll have another budget in May, much closer than normal, usually year on year, of course, but this will be just a matter of 7-8 months. Now, when it comes to JobKeeper, I think the government will simply pursue its strategy to withdraw it. JobKeeper is going to be reduced and then end in late March. Of course, it's going to have to watch the numbers very, very carefully, because there will be some sectors in Australia which will still need some kind of support, whether it's JobKeeper or some sort of revised version, we don't know. But there is clearly going to be a long readjustment to whatever the new normal is going to look like, because the new normal seems to be changing from week to week. And as we can see in these unemployment figures, there's a lot that's very, very unpredictable, Joe.
And Andrew, while we were listening to the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews' media conference, the Prime Minister, Scott Scott Morrison was holding a media conference at the same time. Presumably you were listening into that. What did you take out of that media conference? What were the major issues there?
Well, the major issue here is the reshaping of the ARENA fund, which is principally a fund that has been for solar and wind projects. The mandate for that program, and also for the Clean Energy Fund, will be adjusted according to these government plans. Labor is already signalling that it fiercely rejects that and says that it is for clean energy or for renewable energy, and not necessarily for so-called green steel or for other aspects of the energy sector. The government argues, though, that when it comes to renewable energy, they can largely stand on their own 2 feet. So if that's the case, then the question that's still unresolved is how much of the new $1.9 billion that's going to be put into ARENA and CEFC will actually go in solar and wind. And we don't know the details there, but it's quite clear that the government believes that needs to be other sectors of the energy market that need to be hardened up, so that the inflexibility of some of the energy supply through wind and solar can be firmed up, to use the terminology that the Prime Minister was using today.
Yeah, heard a lot about firming up in the last couple of days. We'll leave it there. Andrew Probyn in Canberra.
Thanks, Joe.